My name is Artyom. I've never thought of myself as a coward. If anything, I used to laugh at all those so-called ghost stories and urban legends. I work at a KFC. Nothing special about it. The smell of fried oil clings to your clothes, your hands reek of spices, and you go home drained. But the pay is decent, and the night shifts are usually quiet. Almost nobody comes in. Usually, there are two of us during the night. One in the kitchen, one at the counter. But that night, my coworker called in sick, and management told me to handle it alone. Just close up the restaurant, nothing scary about it, they said. Nothing scary. How wrong I was. It was midnight. I stood behind the counter, lazily wiping the surface with a damp rag, listening to the silence. The dining area was spotless, chairs stacked on the tables, floor still shiny after mopping. Outside, through the huge glass windows, the glow of streetlights bled in. The neon KFC sign buzzed faintly, its reflection doubling itself in the glass so it looked like there was a second, ghostly dining hall just beyond. The only sounds came from the low hum of refrigerators and the ticking of the wall clock. Sometimes, a faint creak echoed through the air vents, like someone quietly breathing. I tried to ignore it, but the longer I stayed alone, the heavier the feeling became that I wasn't alone at all. At 1:10 I heard it. Footsteps, not loud, just the subtle squeak of sneakers on tile, coming from the kitchen. I froze. 1 second, another, then silence. Just my imagination, I muttered. I pulled out my phone, started some music. But then, the sound came again. Closer. I walked slowly to the kitchen door and peeked inside. The lights were on, equipment sat idle in standby mode. Nobody was there, but I noticed something. On the floor near the fryer, faint wet footprints. Dark, greasy marks across the tiles. The floor I had cleaned less than 30 minutes ago. My stomach tightened. I switched on the security monitor. On screen everything looked still. But in one corner of the kitchen camera, by the walk-in fridge, I saw something like a shadow. A human silhouette. It shifted, moved, and then, in a blink, it was gone. At 2 a.m, I heard knocking. It came from the glass entrance doors. 3 steady taps, like knuckles against the glass. I turned my head sharply, heart hammering. The street outside was empty, lit only by the dim orange of a flickering street lamp. But someone was standing there. A man, or at least the shape of one. Tall, still, pressed against the glass. His face was drowned in shadow from the streetlight behind him. No details, just a silhouette. I swallowed hard. "We're closed," I called, though my voice cracked halfway through. The figure didn't move, he just stood there. Then, slowly, he leaned forward, his head pressed closer to the glass. I stepped back, pulse pounding. And in the same instant, he was gone. I blinked. The sidewalk outside was empty. Nothing but the hum of the neon sign and the whisper of passing cars far away. Relief swept over me for a second, until I noticed the floor. Right there, by the door, were wet footprints. Leading across the tiles, heading toward the kitchen. I didn't want to go in there. But I had to. The smell hit me first, not the usual heavy grease and fried chicken, but something sour, metallic. Like burnt oil mixed with rot. I flicked on the fryer light. The machine was on. I swear I hadn't touched it. Boiling oil bubbled violently inside, spitting tiny sparks onto the steel counter. The ordering screen above the counter flickered, and then text appeared. No customer, no order placed. Just 3 words. Meat, blood, soul. I felt my knees weaken. My throat went dry. "No, no, no," I whispered. The fryer gurgled louder, spitting oil onto the floor. The lights above flickered as though reacting to the sound. I grabbed the switch and shut it off, but the smell, God, the smell wouldn't leave. It wasn't just burnt oil anymore. It smelled like something dead was cooking inside. I staggered back, clutching the counter for balance. That's when I heard it, soft, wet chewing. Someone was eating, right there in the kitchen. But when I turned, there was no one. I couldn't shake the sound of chewing. It didn't echo like a normal noise. It was close, almost inside my ears. Slow, deliberate bites, followed by a wet gulp. I held my breath, waiting for it to stop. And then the silence returned. Heavy, pressing. I forced myself to sit behind the counter. I opened the staff logbook, a battered binder where employees sometimes scribbled notes for the next shift. Anything to distract myself. Flipping through the pages, I found something odd. A page torn halfway out, only fragments of handwriting left. The words still legible sent chills down my spine. "Don't leave me alone in here again. Swore I saw him by the fryer. Burnt smell won't go away." I turned another page. At the bottom, someone had written in shaky letters, "He never left." My blood ran cold. I remembered a rumor I'd heard during training, dismissed it as nonsense. They said years ago, a night worker had died in this very branch. Burned alive after slipping near the fryer. Management called it an accident, but people whispered otherwise, that he'd been screaming long before the oil touched him. That the smell lingered for weeks. And suddenly, the rotten stench around me felt heavier. Like it was seeping from the walls, the vents, the tiles beneath my feet. I slammed the binder shut. My hands were trembling. At 2:45, I heard a tray slide across a table. I froze. The dining room was supposed to be empty, chairs stacked, tables cleared. But as I turned toward the sound, one table by the window wasn't empty anymore. A red tray sat there, neatly placed. On it, a chicken bucket, half eaten, greasy fingerprints smeared across the paper. I hadn't served anyone. I hadn't cooked. The sound came again, chewing. Only this time, it wasn't muffled. It was right there, at that table. Loud bites, skin tearing, bones crunching between invisible teeth. My knees nearly buckled. I forced myself closer, step by step, heart hammering against my ribs. The closer I got, the colder the air became, until my breath puffed out in tiny white clouds. And then, my name, whispered, dragged out, syllable by syllable. "Artyom." I spun around. No one, just the empty room, buzzing lights, and the sound of chewing that never stopped. When I looked back at the tray, the food was gone. All that remained was a smear of something dark on the table. Not sauce, not grease, blood. By 3 o'clock, my nerves were raw. I sat hunched at the counter, trying not to listen, trying not to see. But the restaurant had changed. The lights overhead flickered, buzzing in irregular pulses. One by one, they shut down, until only a single bulb above the register glowed, weak and yellow. The rest of the dining room drowned in shadow. I could still see the glass windows though. And that's where I noticed it. My reflection. It stood at the counter, exactly where I stood. Only, it wasn't moving the same way I was. I lifted my hand slowly. My reflection didn't follow. It stared back, lips curving into a smile I wasn't wearing. A wide, toothy grin that stretched too far across its face. I stumbled backward, crashing into a chair. The reflection stayed, head tilting, smile widening. My stomach churned. Then, footsteps. Not mine. They echoed from the hallway by the bathrooms, slow and deliberate. Someone was walking toward the counter. But the hallway was empty. And yet, I swear I heard breathing. Right behind me. I couldn't take it anymore. My body moved on instinct. I ran into the kitchen, nearly slipping on the greasy floor. The freezer door loomed ahead, a heavy steel slab. Without thinking, I yanked it open, rushed inside, and slammed it shut behind me. Cold air blasted my skin. I pressed my back to the shelves, trying to steady my breath. My chest heaved, white clouds rising in the frozen air. Silence, at first. Then, the chewing, closer this time. Inside the freezer with me. I froze. My eyes darted across the stacked boxes of chicken, bags of fries, slabs of meat. Nothing moved, yet the sound grew louder. Wet, tearing bites. A gulp, a sigh of satisfaction. And then, my name again. Whispered so close, I felt the frost on the words brush my ear. Artyom. The lights flickered once, twice, and went out. In the pitch dark, something shifted beside me. A weight on the shelf. A presence breathing against my neck. I wanted to scream, but the cold stole the air from my lungs. The last thing I remember was the smell, that same burnt, rancid oil, filling the freezer. And a voice, whispering not from outside, but from inside my skull. You never leave.